The humid South Carolina dawn breaks over Parris Island Marine Corps Recruit Depot as Private Lauren Williams stands at the 200-yard firing line, her M16A4 service rifle trembling slightly in her grip. The acrid smell of gunpowder hangs in the still air from the previous firing group. Around her, fellow recruits adjust their positions with growing confidence after 3 weeks of training, but Lauren's hands shake as she chambers around. "Williams!" Staff Sergeant Patterson's voice cuts through the morning silence like a blade. "You're up. Make this one count. It's your last chance before I start the paperwork." Lauren takes a deep breath, feeling the weight of 49 other recruits watching her. The yellow targets downrange seem impossibly small, but she knows better. In her civilian life, she could hit targets twice that distance without breaking a sweat. Today, like every day for the past 3 weeks, she'll miss by design. The first shot goes wide left, the second, high and right. By the 5th round, murmurs ripple through the other recruits. Patterson's jaw tightens as he marks another failing score on his clipboard. Lauren Williams grew up in Millfield, Tennessee, population 3,147, where Friday night football games drew the entire town, and everyone knew your family back 3 generations. Her father, Michael Williams, served 2 tours in Vietnam and came home to work at the Bridgestone tire plant for 37 years. Her mother, Sarah, managed the local credit union and believed in the power of education and hard work. Lauren had been the anomaly in their small town, a straight-A student who preferred spending weekends at her Uncle Ray's private security company rather than at the mall. Ray's business, Millfield Security Services, provided armed guards for local businesses and wealthy landowners. What started as filing paperwork and answering phones for Lauren became something else entirely when Ray discovered her natural ability with firearms. "Damn girl," Ray had said after her first afternoon on his private shooting range, watching her put 10 rounds through the center of a target at 100 yards. "You've got a gift." That gift had led to competitive shooting throughout high school, regional championships, state titles, even a few national competitions where she'd competed against shooters with decades of experience. Her bedroom wall back home was covered with medals and trophies that most people never noticed, since Lauren rarely talked about her achievements. The decision to join the Marines had felt natural. Her father's old service photos showed a proud young man in dress blues, and Lauren wanted that same sense of purpose. She'd scored in the 98th percentile on the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, impressed her recruiter, and arrived at Parris Island with dreams of serving her country with distinction. Now, 3 weeks into the 13-week transformation from civilian to Marine, she was failing spectacularly. The problem had started during the first week of weapons training. As drill instructor Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez demonstrated proper shooting techniques, Lauren had watched with growing horror as she realized how easily she could apply these lessons. The transition from competitive shooting to combat marksmanship wasn't difficult. It was terrifyingly natural. During her first live fire exercise, Lauren had lined up her shot and seen not a paper target, but the human silhouette it represented. The thought of how efficiently she could end a life with these skills had paralyzed her. She'd deliberately pulled her shot wide, then missed the next 4 rounds on purpose. "Williams? What the hell was that?" Staff Sergeant Rodriguez had demanded. "I've seen blind recruits shoot better than you just did." That night, lying on her narrow rack in the squad bay while 49 other recruits slept around her, Lauren had made a decision. She would fail weapons training. She would fail physical fitness tests. She would fail leadership exercises. She would do whatever it took to wash out of the program before she became something she wasn't sure she could live with. The deliberate failure had become increasingly difficult to maintain. Her drill instructors pushed harder, offered extra training, even recommended her for remedial marksmanship courses. With each passing day, the shame of disappointing everyone around her grew heavier, but not as heavy as her fear of succeeding. On a particularly sweltering Thursday morning, as Lauren prepared for what Staff Sergeant Patterson had warned would be her final weapons qualification attempt, she noticed an unfamiliar figure observing from the range tower. Unlike the other Marines on the depot, this man wore unmarked fatigues with no visible rank insignia. Something about his bearing, the way he stood, the intensity of his observation, set him apart from everyone else she'd encountered at Parris Island. Commander James Harper had been watching Lauren Williams for longer than she realized. Her competitive shooting records had flagged an automated recruitment algorithm designed to identify individuals with exceptional marksmanship potential. When those same records showed her systematic failure in military training, Harper had requested permission to observe personally. What he saw confirmed his suspicions. Lauren's misses weren't random. They were precisely placed to avoid the scoring zones while maintaining consistent groupings that demonstrated excellent trigger control and breathing technique. Her weapons handling, when she thought no one was watching, showed muscle memory that could only come from thousands of hours of practice. During a brief moment when the drill instructors were occupied with equipment malfunctions, Harper watched Lauren unconsciously adjust another recruit's grip and stance, then seemed to catch herself and step back. The helping gesture had been automatic, professional, and quickly hidden. As Lauren approached her final qualification attempt, the emotional weight of 3 weeks of deliberate failure pressed down on her shoulders like a lead blanket. Staff Sergeant Patterson had already begun filling out her discharge paperwork. Her platoon mates, initially supportive, had grown tired of her consistent failures. Some whispered that she was weak, others that she was scared, and a few suggested she'd never belonged there in the first place. The worst part was the phone call home the previous evening. Her father's voice had been carefully neutral when she'd tried to prepare him for the possibility that she might not complete the program. "Sometimes things don't work out the way we plan," he'd said, but she could hear the disappointment he was trying to hide. Her mother had been more direct. "Lauren, honey, if this isn't right for you, that's okay. But are you sure you're giving it your best effort?" Standing at the firing line for what everyone believed would be her final attempt, Lauren felt the weight of every choice that had brought her to this moment. 49 other recruits had found ways to overcome their fears and limitations. Why couldn't she? The mysterious observer was still in the tower, his attention focused entirely on her. For a moment, Lauren allowed herself to imagine what would happen if she simply stopped pretending, if she let herself shoot the way she knew how, if she embraced the skills that came as naturally as breathing. The thought terrified her more than failure ever could. She fired her first round wide left, just like always, but as she prepared for the second shot, she noticed the observer making notes in a small notebook. Not the standard evaluation forms used by the drill instructors, but something else entirely. The final shot hangs in the air as Lauren realizes someone has been watching more than her performance. They've been watching her deliberate failure. The observer begins walking down from the tower, and Lauren knows her carefully constructed facade is about to crumble. Commander Harper's boots echo on the metal stairs of the observation tower as he descends toward the firing line. Lauren's final shot has just impacted the target, another deliberate miss that maintains her perfect record of failure. Around her, the other recruits are packing up their gear, most avoiding eye contact with the girl who couldn't seem to hit anything. Staff Sergeant Patterson approaches with Lauren's scorecard, his expression a mixture of disappointment and resignation. "Williams, I've seen a lot of recruits struggle with marksmanship, but I've never seen someone with your consistency in missing. It's almost like..." He stops mid-sentence as Commander Harper reaches the firing line. The staff sergeant's demeanor immediately shifts to attention, though Harper's lack of visible rank creates a moment of confused protocol. "Staff Sergeant, I need to speak with Private Williams," Harper says with quiet authority that cuts through the morning chatter. Privately, Harper leads Lauren away from the firing line to a small maintenance building behind the range complex. The space smells of gun oil and metal cleaner, with workbenches covered in disassembled weapons and cleaning supplies. Through the single window, they can see other training platoons conducting drill exercises in the distance. "Private Williams, I'm Commander Harper. I've been reviewing your records." Harper's voice carries no accusation, just professional interest. "Tell me about Millfield Security Services." Lauren's stomach drops. Her uncle's business was listed on her enlistment paperwork, but it had been described only as part-time clerical work. How much did this commander know about her actual activities there? "Sir, I did administrative work for my uncle's security company during high school summers." Harper opens a tablet and scrolls through what appears to be a comprehensive background investigation. "Administrative work that included extensive time on a private shooting range. Administrative work that led to your participation in regional and national shooting competitions. Administrative work that resulted in you becoming one of the most accomplished young marksmen in Tennessee." The weight of discovery settles over Lauren like a physical force. She'd been so careful to downplay her civilian shooting achievements during the enlistment process, mentioning only that she'd participated in some local competitions. Harper shows her the tablet screen, which displays a photo from the 2020 National Junior Shooting Championships. Lauren, 3 years younger and wearing a Team USA jacket, stands holding a precision rifle and a first-place trophy. Her smile in the photo radiates confidence and joy, emotions that seem foreign to her current situation. "This is you, isn't it, Private Williams? First place in junior precision rifle, third place overall against adult competitors with decades of experience." The range officer's notes describe your performance as unprecedented for someone of her age and experience level. Lauren stares at the photo of her younger self, remembering the pride she'd felt that day. Her father had driven 12 hours to watch her compete, and for the first time in her life, She'd felt like she'd found something she was genuinely gifted at. The memory makes her current situation even more painful. Sir, I don't understand why my civilian shooting history is relevant to my performance here. Harper closes the tablet and studies her with eyes that seem to see through every defense she's constructed. Private Williams, you arrive at Parris Island with some of the most impressive marksmanship credentials I've ever seen, then proceed to fail every weapons qualification we put in front of you. That strikes me as statistically impossible. He pauses, letting the implication hang in the air between them. Unless you're failing on purpose. The accusation lands like a physical blow. Lauren has spent 3 weeks maintaining the fiction that she simply couldn't adapt to military shooting, and now this stranger has seen through her deception in a matter of minutes. Sir, why would anyone deliberately fail Marine Corps training? Instead of answering directly, Harper walks to the window and looks out at the training grounds where other recruits are practicing combat movements. His next words are spoken to the glass, but clearly intended for her. I've been in special operations for 15 years, Private Williams. I've worked with some of the most lethal individuals our military has ever produced, and I've learned to recognize something that most people don't understand: the difference between someone who can't kill and someone who's afraid of how easily they could. Lauren feels her carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble. The fear she's carried for 3 weeks, the terror of discovering she had a natural talent for lethality, suddenly feels exposed and vulnerable. I've also learned, Harper continues, that the people who are afraid of their own capabilities are often exactly the people we need for the most important missions. Harper returns to face Lauren directly, his expression shifting from investigative to almost paternal. Tell me what happened during your first live-fire exercise, Private Williams. And this time, tell me the truth. The request breaks something inside Lauren that has been straining for weeks. The isolation, the shame, the constant performance of incompetence. All of it comes pouring out in a flood of honesty she hadn't expected. Sir, during my first weapons training, when I lined up that shot, I realized how easy it would be, not just to hit the target, but to... She struggles to find words for the feeling that had paralyzed her. Sir, in civilian competition, you're shooting at paper. Here, they're teaching us to kill people, and I realized I was very, very good at it. That scared me more than failing ever could. Harper nods as if this explanation makes perfect sense. What specifically scared you about being good at it? That it didn't scare me enough, sir. The transition from competitive shooting to combat marksmanship felt natural, too natural. I realized that I could learn these skills and apply them without any of the moral struggle that I thought should come with taking a life. The honesty feels both liberating and terrifying. For 3 weeks, Lauren has carried this burden alone, and now she's sharing it with a stranger who seems to understand something she'd never been able to articulate. Harper reaches into his uniform pocket and withdraws a folder marked with security classifications Lauren has never seen before. Private Williams, what if I told you there were ways to serve your country that involved using your capabilities to save lives instead of taking them? What if there were missions that required your specific skills, but in context designed to prevent conflicts rather than escalate them? Harper opens the classified folder, revealing documents and photographs that Lauren can't quite make out from her position. The glimpses she catches suggest operations that look nothing like conventional military actions. Urban environments, civilian clothes, equipment she doesn't recognize. This is an invitation, Private Williams, not an order. But before you make any decisions, I want you to understand what you'd be choosing between. He shows her 2 documents. The first is her discharge paperwork, already partially completed by Staff Sergeant Patterson. The second is a set of orders, with an official seal she doesn't recognize and text that begins with "Classified, Special Operations Training Command." The first document sends you home tomorrow, with a failure classification that will follow you for the rest of your life. The second document transfers you to a program that officially doesn't exist, to train for missions that officially don't happen, in service of operations that officially never occurred. Lauren looks between the 2 papers, each representing a completely different future. Sir, what kind of program are we talking about? Harper's expression grows serious. The kind that teaches you to use your gifts in ways that prevent war instead of fighting them, the kind that turns natural marksmen into invisible guardians, the kind that asks you to serve your country in ways that require both lethal precision and absolute discretion. He hands her both documents. Take your time, Private Williams, but understand that some choices can't be undone, and some opportunities don't come twice. Lauren holds her future in her hands, literal discharge from the Marines, or transfer to a program she doesn't understand. As Harper prepares to leave, he drops one final piece of information. By the way, Private Williams, We've been watching you since the day you enlisted. Your competitive shooting records flagged our recruitment algorithms months ago. We've been waiting to see if you had the psychological profile to match your technical skills. Lauren sits alone in the maintenance building for 20 minutes after Commander Harper leaves, staring at the two documents that represent completely opposite futures. Through the window, she can see her training platoon conducting close-order drill on the parade deck, their synchronized movements a testament to the transformation she's been avoiding. The discharge papers feel heavier than they should. Her name is already typed in the appropriate fields, with today's date and Staff Sergeant Patterson's signature. All that's missing is her own acknowledgement of failure. She imagines the conversation with her parents, the questions from friends back home, the weight of knowing she'd deliberately sabotaged her own dreams. The classified orders are more complex, filled with terminology she doesn't recognize and references to programs that sound like they belong in spy novels rather than military reality. Report to Building 7, Tactical Range Charlie, full combat gear, live ammunition authorized, duration indefinite. At the bottom of the page, in precise military script, authorization, Commander Harper, Special Projects Division. Lauren's contemplation is interrupted by the arrival of her bunkmate, Private First Class Maria Santos from San Antonio, Texas. Maria had been one of the few recruits who'd continued trying to help Lauren improve, even as others gave up. Williams, what are you doing back here? Patterson's looking for you. Said something about finalizing paperwork. Maria notices the documents in Lauren's hands, and her expression shifts to concern. Are those discharge papers? The genuine worry in Maria's voice almost breaks Lauren's composure. Despite her deliberate failures, some of the other recruits had continued to treat her as a fellow Marine in training, rather than a lost cause. Maria, can I ask you something? Why did you join the Marines? Maria sits on a nearby workbench, recognizing that this conversation is more important than whatever duties are waiting for them outside. My older brother was killed in Afghanistan 3 years ago. IED outside Kandahar. I joined because I wanted to make sure his sacrifice meant something. The simple honesty of Maria's motivation makes Lauren's own internal struggle feel both more complex and more selfish. Maria had lost someone she loved and channeled that loss into service. Lauren had discovered she possessed potentially lethal skills and let fear drive her toward failure. What about you? Maria asks. What made you want to be a Marine before things got difficult? Lauren considers the question, trying to remember the person who'd raised her right hand and taken the oath of enlistment. I wanted to serve something bigger than myself. I wanted to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. But I also wanted to prove that I could be more than just a small-town girl with good grades. So what's stopping you? The question is so direct, so uncompromised by the complex rationalizations Lauren has been using, that it cuts through weeks of self-deception. What is stopping her? Fear of her own capabilities? Fear of becoming someone she doesn't recognize? Or fear of failing at something that matters more than anything she's ever attempted? Lauren makes her decision with the sudden clarity that comes from finally acknowledging the truth she's been avoiding. She folds the discharge papers and places them in her cargo pocket, then stands with the classified orders in her hand. Maria, if I tell you something that sounds completely impossible, will you promise not to think I'm losing my mind? Williams, after 3 weeks of watching you miss targets that I know you should be able to hit, I already think something impossible is going on. Lauren takes a deep breath and makes the choice to trust someone with the truth she's been carrying alone. I haven't been failing because I can't do this. I've been failing because I'm afraid of how good I could be at it. She tells Maria about her civilian shooting background, her competitive achievements, her recognition during that first weapons training session that the transition to military marksmanship would be frighteningly easy. She explains the deliberate misses, the carefully maintained facade of incompetence, the growing weight of disappointing everyone around her while simultaneously terrifying herself with her own potential. Maria listens without interruption, her expression shifting from confusion to understanding to something approaching anger. You mean to tell me that for 3 weeks, I've been watching you pretend to fail while the rest of us were actually struggling to succeed? The accusation stings because it's entirely accurate. While other recruits had been genuinely pushing their limits, and sometimes falling short, Lauren had been performing failure while secretly maintaining skills that surpassed most of their instructors. Maria, I know how that sounds, but no, Williams, I don't think you do know how that sounds. It sounds like you're so privileged that you can afford to waste opportunities that other people would kill for. It sounds like you're so comfortable with your own abilities that you can play games with commitments that mean everything to people like me. The criticism hits harder than any of the official reprimands Lauren has received. Maria's anger isn't bureaucratic or professional, it's personal and entirely justified. Maria's words force Lauren to confront the broader implications of her choices. While she's been focused on her own internal struggle with her capabilities, She's been part of a platoon where 49 other young people have been genuinely fighting to transform themselves into Marines. Her deliberate failures haven't existed in isolation. They've affected training schedules, instructor attention, and platoon morale. You're right, Lauren says, the admission feeling like a physical weight lifting from her shoulders. I've been so focused on my own fear that I forgot I'm part of something bigger than my personal comfort level. Maria's anger doesn't immediately dissipate, but it shifts toward something more constructive. So what are you going to do about it? Lauren shows Maria the classified orders. I'm going to stop being afraid of what I might become and start focusing on what I could do with these abilities. Reading the orders, Maria's expression shifts again, this time toward concern of a different type. Williams, this doesn't look like regular Marine Corps training. This looks like, I don't know what this looks like, but it doesn't look normal. Commander Harper said it was a program for preventing conflicts instead of fighting them. Operations that save lives by stopping wars before they start. Maria hands the orders back with visible reluctance. That sounds like the kind of thing that's either incredibly important or incredibly dangerous. Probably both. For the first time in 3 weeks, Lauren feels like she's having a conversation about her actual future, instead of maintaining a fiction about her capabilities. Maria, if something happened to me, would you make sure my family knows that I finally stopped running away from what I could do? The request acknowledges both the uncertainty of what Lauren is choosing and the finality of her decision to stop pretending to be less than she is. Lauren and Maria walk back toward the main training area, where Staff Sergeant Patterson is indeed waiting with Lauren's completed discharge paperwork. But instead of approaching him directly, Lauren turns toward Building 7, a structure she'd noticed but never entered during her 3 weeks on base. Williams, Patterson's voice carries across the parade ground. Where do you think you're going? We have paperwork to complete. Lauren stops, turns back toward her drill instructor, and for the first time in 3 weeks, stands at attention with genuine military bearing instead of the half-hearted approximation she's been performing. Staff Sergeant, I have new orders, she calls back, holding up the classified documents. Patterson's expression shifts from administrative impatience to professional curiosity as he approaches to examine the orders. His eyes widen as he reads the classifications and authorizations. Private Williams, I don't know what you've gotten yourself into, but these orders are well above my clearance level. He looks at her with an expression she's never seen before, something between respect and concern. Are you sure about this? Lauren looks back at Building 7, then at Maria, who nods encouragingly, then at Patterson, who has spent 3 weeks watching her fail at everything he tried to teach her. Staff Sergeant, for the first time in 3 weeks, I'm sure about something. As Lauren walks toward Building 7, she passes through security checkpoints that require clearances she doesn't possess, but that somehow recognize her classified orders. The final checkpoint is manned by personnel she doesn't recognize, wearing equipment she's never seen. One of them speaks into a radio. Commander Harper, the Williams package is en route to your location. Building 7's interior bears no resemblance to any military facility Lauren has experienced during her time at Parris Island. Instead of the utilitarian concrete and fluorescent lighting she's grown accustomed to, she finds herself in a space that feels more like a high-tech research facility or corporate headquarters. The hallways are carpeted, the walls lined with framed photographs of operations she doesn't recognize, and the personnel move with a quiet professionalism that's distinctly different from the structured chaos of basic training. Commander Harper meets her at the main reception area, accompanied by a woman Lauren doesn't recognize. The woman appears to be in her early 30s, with the kind of athletic build and alert bearing that suggests extensive combat experience, but she wears civilian clothes and no visible rank insignia. Private Williams, I'm glad you decided to accept the transfer. This is Rachel Morrison, your primary instructor for the assessment phase. Rachel extends her hand for a civilian handshake rather than a military salute, immediately establishing that the protocols Lauren has been learning for 3 weeks don't apply here. Williams, before we begin, I need you to understand that everything you see and hear from this point forward is classified at levels you've never encountered. Do you have any questions before we proceed? The question is clearly more than procedural. Rachel is giving Lauren one final opportunity to return to the known challenges of regular Marine training instead of stepping into something completely unfamiliar. Lauren thinks about Maria's words, about her parents' expectations, about the person she'd been when she first raised her right hand to take the oath of enlistment. Ma'am, my only question is whether this program will teach me to use my abilities to protect people instead of just eliminate threats. Rachel smiles, the first genuinely warm expression Lauren has seen from military personnel since arriving at Parris Island. Williams, that's exactly what this program is designed to do. Rachel leads Lauren through facilities that seem to exist in a completely different world from the Parris Island she's known for 3 weeks. They pass through a communications center where operators monitor screens displaying information from around the globe. globe, a medical facility equipped with surgical suites that could handle combat trauma, and a series of classrooms where small groups of trainees study subjects that aren't part of any standard military curriculum. The Special Operations Training Command officially doesn't exist, Rachel explains as they walk. We recruit individuals with specific skill sets for operations that require capabilities beyond what conventional military training can provide. The people we train work in the spaces between nations, in the moments before conflicts escalate, in situations where traditional military solutions would create more problems than they solve. They enter an observation room overlooking a training facility that takes Lauren's breath away. The space is enormous, with ranges extending to distances she's never attempted, and equipment that looks decades ahead of anything she's seen. But more impressive than the technology are the people using it. Men and women of various ages move through complex scenarios with a fluid precision that makes her 3 weeks of basic training look like elementary exercises. How long do people train here? Lauren asks, watching a woman who appears to be about her own age engage multiple targets while navigating obstacles under what appears to be simulated fire. That depends entirely on the individual, Rachel replies. Some people complete our assessment phase in a matter of weeks and move directly to operational assignments. Others need months or even years to develop the psychological tools necessary for this kind of work. A few discover that despite their technical abilities, they're not suited for operations that require absolute moral clarity under extreme pressure. Rachel points to different groups working through various scenarios. The man in the blue shirt spent 2 years with us learning to apply his natural tactical skills to hostage rescue operations. The woman working with the communications equipment was a civilian computer programmer who volunteered for service after September 11th. She now prevents cyber attacks that could cripple critical infrastructure. Lauren's introduction to the program begins with an evaluation that bears no resemblance to the standardized tests and rigid protocols of basic training. Instead of being told what to do and how to do it, she's presented with scenarios and asked to develop her own solutions. The first exercise places her in a mock urban environment with multiple potential threats and an unknown number of civilians who need protection. Instead of simple target identification and engagement, Lauren must assess the situation, determine the best course of action, and execute a plan that neutralizes threats while ensuring no innocent people are harmed. What surprises Lauren most is how naturally she adapts to the complex decision-making required. The competitive shooting skills she developed over years of civilian training translate seamlessly to the tactical applications, but more importantly, her instinctive understanding of angles, timing, and precision allows her to develop solutions that protect rather than simply eliminate. Outstanding, Rachel comments as Lauren completes the scenario without a single civilian casualty and with all legitimate threats neutralized. Now let's see how you handle moral ambiguity. The second scenario places Lauren in a situation where the distinction between threats and non-combatants isn't clear. She must gather information, make rapid assessments, and act on incomplete intelligence while under pressure that would overwhelm most people. The exercise is designed to test not just technical skills, but psychological resilience and ethical decision-making under extreme stress. Lauren finds herself drawing on resources she didn't know she possessed. The competitive shooting experience provides technical foundation, but the real test is her ability to maintain moral clarity while operating at the edge of her capabilities. She discovers that her 3 weeks of deliberate failure at basic training had actually been preparation for exactly this kind of challenge, learning to make complex decisions about the appropriate application of lethal skills. As Lauren completes her initial assessment, she realizes that her fear of her own capabilities had been both her greatest weakness and her most important strength. The same self-awareness that had driven her to deliberate failure is exactly what's needed for operations that require absolute precision in the application of lethal skills. Williams, Rachel says as they conclude the day's exercises, I want you to understand what you've demonstrated today. Technical proficiency with weapons is something we can teach. Tactical thinking can be developed through training, but the kind of moral clarity you've shown, the ability to apply lethal skills with surgical precision while never losing sight of the larger mission to protect innocent lives, that's something that can't be taught. It's something people either have or they don't. Lauren thinks about her journey from competitive shooting to deliberate failure to this moment of recognition. Ma'am, what happens now? Now you begin training for operations that will challenge everything you think you know about military service. You'll learn to operate in environments where the wrong decision could start wars instead of preventing them. You'll develop capabilities that will allow you to protect American interests without anyone ever knowing you were there. Rachel pauses, studying Lauren with the same analytical attention Commander Harper had shown. But most importantly, you'll learn to use your natural gifts in service of missions that save lives by preventing conflicts, rather than winning them. That evening, Lauren sits in her new quarters, a private room with communication equipment that allows secure contact with the outside world, and writes a letter to her parents that she knows she can never send. In it, she explains her journey from competitive shooting to deliberate failure, to finding her true calling in service that requires both lethal precision and unwavering moral clarity. She writes about discovering that her fear of her own capabilities hadn't been weakness but wisdom, preparing her for responsibilities that require the ultimate in both professional competence and personal integrity. She describes learning that the greatest military victories are often the ones that prevent defeat from ever becoming possible, achieved by people whose names will never appear in history books. As she seals the letter in an envelope marked, "To be delivered in case of my death," Lauren reflects on the transformation from Private Lauren Williams, failed Marine recruit, to someone whose real name and true mission will remain classified for the rest of her life. Through her window, she can see the lights of regular Parris Island, where Maria Santos and the rest of her former platoon are sleeping in squad bays, preparing for another day of the conventional Marine training Lauren had found so terrifying. Tomorrow, they'll practice the skills that make good Marines. Tomorrow, Lauren will begin learning skills that prevent the need for Marines to fight at all. 6 months later, a news report mentions the peaceful resolution of a potential international incident that was prevented through diplomatic channels. The report doesn't mention the young woman who spent 3 weeks learning to prevent conflicts through precise application of capabilities she'd once been afraid to acknowledge. Some failures, Lauren reflects from an undisclosed location, are just success wearing a disguise, and some orders really do change everything. Lauren's first operational assignment comes through encrypted communication. Asset deployment required. Location classified. Mission objective: prevent escalation of regional conflict through surgical elimination of key destabilizing element. Authorization level presidential. Duration indefinite. For the first time since accepting Commander Harper's orders, Lauren feels ready for whatever comes next.